Hi, this is Jowie Malovhele, your transformational coach. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Soul Anchor by Dr. Malovhele. Today, I want to talk to you about something that I've struggled with. Something that I know that, there are still some people who struggle with. And I recognized why I struggled with it. And because I recognize why I struggled with it, I would like to share my journey in that regard. And I'm your storyteller. I don't just tell stories, but I tell stories with an intent to help me and you transform and transcend. Today, I'm going to talk to you about my story and my experience with my mother-in-law. However, I want you to note, I said my story and my experience with my mother-in-law. I'm telling my story. I cannot tell her story. However, in a story, there could be one player. There could also be more than one player. In this case, it's me and it's my mother-in-law. However, it's about my experience. It's about my lessons. Now, oftentimes, we get married to our husbands. However, husbands have a family. In some cases, he has a mother. In some cases, he doesn't have his own biological mother, but there's aunts and other people who provided that remothering for him growing up. For me, my mother-in-law is alive. My mother-in-law, I now know for sure that she's a beautiful soul. When I got married to my husband, I lived with his family for 8 months to about a year. However, I wasn't prepared for life in an extended family setup. As much as I thought I was prepared, I knew my husband. I wasn't sure about his family. My interactions with them were very brief and short. So I learned that my mother-in-law, just like me, has a story. I have a story, and I'm telling my story. However, I don't remember me trying to understand her story. And it seems to have slipped my mind that as much as I had a story, as much as I was in my journey, she was also in her own journey. She also had a story. I had expectations. Probably she had her expectations. Were they real? I'm not sure. I had my expectations. She had her expectations, as much as you have your expectations about her and she has her expectations about you. My expectations were not met. I'm not sure about her expectations of me. My expectations were not met. I went into her family. I expected her to be a mom to me. However, it was a very unrealistic expectation. I couldn't be his baby girl. She had her own baby girls. I had my mom. I expected her to be my mom, although it was in my subconscious mind. However, today, as an elderly woman, I can swallow that truth. I can own it. Even though it did not seem like it then, when I look at it now, I realize that I expected from a mother what she probably did not have to give me. Then, when the expectations were not met, obviously, there will be disappointment. In my journey with her, I then learned, I can't say I learned it as, a young bride, as I was growing, in my own journey, in my own self-discovery, then the things that I saw, I was then able to stop and ask myself to say, you know what? I see where I made a mistake then. I should have learned her. I should have taken who she was and superimposed her to my expectations for me to get a template of who she is and who she was then. Had I done it like that, my experience could have been different, because I realized years later that I did it vice versa. I say this to you today because some of you haven't walked the 27 years that I've walked. You might have just started your journey, but there's wisdom for you to say, you know what? Know that your mother-in-law has a story. You have your own story. And know that you might expect her to be like your mother when she cannot be like your mother. She can only be the mother she is. Not like your mother, but the mother she can be. And at the same time, take her, the person, superimpose what you see to your expectations, then you will find a template that you can work with. I learned that, you know what? I didn't study her as a woman she was. Before she was my mother-in-law, she is a woman. Before she was my mother-in-law, she's a mother. Then I learned to say, I must learn the woman she is. Yes, my mother-in-law, old school, difficult for me to sit down with her and say, tell me your story. But then I had to learn her through indirect observation. And when you use indirect observation, I want you to be very careful, because your perceptions and value judgments about her might distort your picture. Go there as you are. Remove your perceptions, your assumptions, and let her dance. As she dances, you pick up the dance moves. As she speaks, you pick up the rhythm in her voice. Then you get to see the woman she is, even when you didn't ask her. I also learned that, you know what? She is a mom. She had 6 children. Obviously, like me, how I mother my sons, it's not the same. I am mothering different people with different personalities. I should have observed how she mothered, and she was mothering each of her children for me to see the mother she was. Because she was not only my husband's mother. How she related to my husband, it's not the same way that she related to her other sons and daughters. I would have quickly learned her relationship with her daughters. I would have known how she rolls as a woman and how she rolls as a mother. Now, this is another thing. I should have learned the in-law she was. Remember, I said she has 6 children, 4 sons, 2 daughters. I should have learned the mother-in-law she was to each of her daughters-in-law, the 4 daughters-in-law. I should have also learned who she was and becoming to her 2 sons-in-law, how she relates with each of us there. Then I would have seen the person she was. Because somewhere there, if there were pathologies, I would have seen there's a pathology and not personalize it to me. Because there were things that I observed that she did with all the four of us, all the daughters-in-law. And that should have told me something. You know what? She is who she is. Remove and lower your expectations, because a person is only capable of giving what they have. Sometimes our expectations don't align with their capacity and capabilities. You want them to give you what they don't have, and you end up hurting them. And it affects how you relate with your mother-in-law. But if you learn the woman she is and becoming, the mother she is to each of her grandchildren, the grandmother she is to each of her grandchildren, the mother she is to each of her children, and the in-law she is to each of the daughters and the sons-in-law, you would have seen, I would have seen very early on who she was, and then adjust everything me in my relationship with her, than for me to hold on to a virtual reality about her, an expectation she doesn't have capacity to meet. I say this because I want you to reflect on your relationship with your mother-in-law. How are your expectations of her? When I stopped evaluating her from my expectations, something in me changed. I began to see the woman she was. I began to see the capacity she had. I began to embrace whatever she gave me, because she gave me what she had. What she had went with what she knew. It aligned to the information that she had at hand. Expecting me to behave in a way that she didn't know how was expecting amiss. You expect amiss, you are guaranteed hurt. And that hurt, I want you to know that it's a self-imposed hurt. You expose yourself and subject yourself to hurt because your expectations are your worst enemy. But if you learn the person and align your expectation to the person, then you begin to embrace their soul. You begin to see the beauty in their soul, because you don't see what they can give you. You embrace what they can give you, and you filled with gratitude, because that's what they know. That's all all they can give you. That's all they have. I want you to think back. If you are married like me and you have an in-law, I want you to look at you first. Where did you go wrong? Because once you identify, then you are able to self-correct. Remember, each story can be edited. You can edit your story. You cannot edit her story. You only have power to edit your story. And I also want you to know that you have a choice to be hurt. You have a choice to be hurt. You choose. You can react or respond. I also learned that, you know what? Sometimes my mother-in-law's vocabulary, my vocabulary, they just didn't seem to match at times. She had her own way of expressing things that didn't go down well with me. But when I started learning her, I started hearing how she would respond when I say something or when I've done something. And it was no longer an issue for me because I knew how she would respond. Because that's the only way she knew how to respond. I learned her way, I learned her style, aligned my expectations to her way and her style because I knew the person. And when I started knowing her for who she was, not what I thought she must be, I started seeing the beautiful soul she was just as she was. And I didn't want anything different. Because what I could have wanted differently, she might not have had. And she wasn't going to give it. My advice to you is that instead of hurting yourself, instead of being caught in that maze where you don't know how to get out, instead of opening yourself up to hurt, learn the woman, learn the mother to each child, learn the in-law to each of the in-laws, learn the grandmother to each of the grandchildren, because sometimes you will expect her to be to your children what she can be to your children. She can be to her daughter's children what she cannot be to the son's children. But when you've observed and you've seen patterns, you align your expectations because you know the person. Now, do I want anything different? No. Would I say, looking at my relationship with her today, would I want it to be any different? No. The 27 years that I've been part of her family, all she gave me in the 27 years, whether I liked it or not, whether I could swallow and stomach it or not, whether I could embrace it or not, pleasurable, unpleasurable, it's all she had to give me. And when I started understanding that, I became empathetic towards her, because now I started seeing her journey playing out in the open. I separated my mother from her. I had two mothers. However, with these two mothers, it was okay for each of them to be who they were in their distinctness. I didn't take this one, cut and paste on this one. No. I know my mother. I know how she rolls. How did I know my mother and how she rolls? Of the 47, 48 years that I've been with my mom, I've learned her 27 years with my mother-in-law. I've learned her. Why? Because I allowed myself to learn her. When I didn't know her, I didn't allow myself to know the person. I knew her from my assumptions and perceptions. Now, I stopped performing because there was no need to perform. I allowed myself to be me. It was not whether she loved or liked what she saw or what she had in me. It's all I could be. It's all I could give. I started giving from who I was becoming. When I loved myself more, then I loved her more. When I gave myself more grace, then I gave her more grace. When I became generous with myself, then I was generous with her too. In learning myself first, discovering myself, rediscovering myself, then I also learned her. Do I want anything different? Probably not. Because I am authentic. I taught myself to be who I am. And I learned that who I am is enough. Who I am, it's acceptable. Who I am, it's lovely. Who I am is appreciated. Who I am, it's enough. I needn't be another person. When I did that, I gave myself permission to be. When I gave myself permission to be, I also allowed her to be who she is. I look at who she is, and I don't have a red pen. I don't have a checklist. I just embrace who she is, whole. Because she comes whole. She comes with a history. She comes with a past. I might not know it, but it's there. I know mine. I know my story. Now, in closure, girls, be wise. There's always a second chance. I want to encourage you to use your second chance to learn, unlearn, relearn. Form new patterns, form new behaviors. If there's pathologies, clean them up. Clean them up. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to transact. When you allow yourself to be, you allow her to be. When you allow yourself to be enough, you allow her to be enough. However, when you perform for that acceptance, when you perform for that affirmation and appreciation, you fail her because you deny her who you really are. When you give her you allow her to give you herself. Now, I want you to take your books. I want you to go back. Have 2 columns. I want you to identify areas. Identify areas where you see that, you know what? Here, I made a mistake. And on the other column, how do I correct it? Because for you to just say, you know what? This, I should have done this way. It doesn't mean going forward, you will correct it. However, when you know that, you know what? I didn't know, but now I know better. I'm better than I was yesterday, and I can do better today. I am better than I was, as a young wife and an in-law. I'm even better today as an elderly woman. As your Titus 2 woman, I say to you, learn, learn, learn. We've walked the journey for you. You don't have to make mistakes that your predecessors made. My mistakes, let them be your stepping stone. Stand on my shoulders. Learn, learn, and be the best version of you. In being that best version of you, you become your mother-in-law's best version. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like and share our videos.